Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the second part of this special edition of Real Talk. I'm your host. I've been talking to two very amazing, fabulous women who've been actively campaigning for the people of Palestine, particularly over the last 7-8 weeks for Gaza. What we have all witnessed, they have witnessed as well. And as one of my guests, in fact both of them said, that the images that they saw, like everybody else, traumatized them. We've seen, I mean, some of you have not even seen some of the stuff that is being put on social media, the true footage of some of the devastation that has been taking place, some of the actual butchery that is going on in, and I use my word very carefully, in Gaza. And they've been actively involved in trying to see what they can do to try and make a difference to this Holocaust that is going on at the moment, the genocide that is taking place in front of our eyes. So Tanisha and Zainab, who've been on the program today, they've talked about the importance and the influence of social media. But we also talked about, in the break and before that, how the social media companies are now acting as censors, trying to prevent some of the stuff that is being challenged on social media, so against some of the narrative that is going on. So Tanisha, you know, obviously you said you've got over 100,000 followers and you use your platform to try and put the truth out there, and Zainab, you do as well. Excuse me. And you've come across this blockage, haven't you?
Yes.
Where you put something up and the social media companies sort of blank you out in a way.
Mm-hmm. It's called a shadow ban.
Is it?
So it depends what your hashtag is, it depends what the content is and what it is that you're talking about. And if they deem it fit, they will shadow ban you. So if you're used to, for example...
So where's the freedom of expression?
That's exactly
I mean,
what
our government talks about freedom of expression, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Do you feel that it's freedom for some and not the others?
Oh yeah. I think if you're saying something that suits their narrative, absolutely.
Right.
But if you dare try to practice freedom of speech, then they don't really like it. So yeah, we've been shadow banned.
Who influences the social media company? Is it the politicians? Is it themselves? Do they police themselves? Who does it?
I suppose it depends who they've got ties with financially and who their partners are and who's involved in that side of things.
The shareholding, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, the boycott campaign obviously is something that, you know, I know you and I am involved, and I have been involved. As I said, during South Africa, I was very involved in the boycott campaign. So if you post something that says boycott this particular company or product, do you think you'll get, is it what, shadow banned?
If I have posted that before,
Right.
and I've had complaints, so people can report your, if it's on Facebook or something, people can report your status, and if it's flagged enough times, then it's removed immediately.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Mr. Musk, is it? Elon Musk, he used to do that, didn't he, with Twitter and now X. Yeah, and he's being accused of being anti-Semitic. Now there's lots of companies are saying they're not going to advertise on it. So he's very unhappy with that. But Zainab, I mean, obviously you're a social media activist, I presume, as well. Maybe
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a big platform.
Not as big as mine.
I'm more of a community
zilch.
activist.
Right.
I have a small platform and I use that for my voice. But I think engaging with the community in general, it's really important. I feel like the freedom of expression being suppressed does not just extend to social media, but just, for example, in our schools, even with our elected officials, they're not really representative of our voices. So it's kind of translated just in normal day-to-day living. So, I mean, even with schools, it's important that they push out an education that goes beyond the events of the 7th of October. And I mean, in my niece's school, it's a primary school, and the way educating people in what, I mean, I rang the school because I wasn't really impressed with what was being taught to my 4-year-old niece. I think it's not a political issue that they should be pushing out to kids. So it's important that I feel like parents engage with their schools and what's actually being taught. And we look into the curriculum that, you know, what are the putting out there in the version of events. Because if you're going to solely base it on the 7th of October, you need to kind of look at the history of Palestine. There's nothing wrong with teaching kids about the history of Palestine, and I think that education needs to be there in mosques, in the schools, in the community in general. So like I said, that freedom of expression is only going to be there if there's an education.
It's for the chosen few, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, going back to a point that Tanisha made, I think indirectly in a way, do you feel that over the last centuries or so, that we've had a one-dimensional history taught in schools, which sort of wiping out all the atrocities that, you know, the West committed as well, right? I mean, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Go on.
I didn't learn. I don't think I learn about what the UK's history is,
Right.
and what the UK did until I left school, because
Right.
that narrative is not being talked about in classrooms.
Right.
And when you compare it to what's going on right now, it's just like you said, they're not talking about the history of Palestine,
Right.
because it doesn't suit the narrative that our government is pushing, that the media is pushing.
Right.
And therefore it's a miseducation. And I also think, like I talked about earlier, our communities are very diverse, and my family is very diverse. I just, it's normal. We should be able to, it doesn't matter what colour you are, it doesn't matter what your religion is, if you have a religion or not, we should all be able to live in and respect one another. And I feel like there is a lot of pockets in communities, especially those communities that are high in deprivation too, that don't actually engage with people that are of colour. If they kind of stay to their own circle, and not by on purpose, but sometimes by accident. So sometimes it's hard to educate those people that don't have friends that are Muslim, that don't.
So they have a lot of misconceptions about people.
They
as
do.
well.
So their only access to any information is the news. So they take everything on board. But it's like we said with social media, there's good and bad to social media, and there is misconceptions too through social media, depending on who you follow on there.
Right. I mean, just a side point on this. I mean, Tanisha mentioned something that I've mentioned a few times on the program. I have a friend I've not seen for a long time, called Professor Chris Allen, who did a study about Islamophobia. And without going into too much detail, he found that 80% of the public in the white non-Muslim population gets their information about Islam and Muslims from the media, both the print media and the live media. And when he analyzed all the stories, he found that 87% of the stories were false or misinforming. So there's a big issue there. I'll come back to that. I mean, you talked about schools, your niece in schools.
Yeah.
The Education Secretary at the very beginning of this dispute, this war on Gaza, wrote out a letter to all the schools saying we do not want schools to be talking about what is happening at the moment. Have you come across that? Have you seen that? So the government itself was trying to stop discussion and dialogue on Palestine, as you talked about it. But what can parents do? I mean, you said you got in touch with your school.
Yeah, I think they're trying to focus on being neutral in this situation, certain schools. But I think there's been incidents, like I recently came across one in Halifax actually, where a little boy was actually, he came on a non-school uniform day with a Palestine, a top in support of Palestine. It's actually written in Arabic, and one of the teachers apparently inquired with another student maybe about what that actually meant, and he said, I'm from Palestine and I'm in support, or so, don't quote me, but something to that extent. And he was left feeling really uncomfortable, asked to remove that shirt and put on a sports top, a part of his PE kit, and asked to remove that. Now, can you imagine what that young little boy would have felt like? The fact that they're trying to almost erase the Palestinian identity, that's a concern. I mean, he's Palestinian. It's like me saying I'm Pakistani, or you saying you're Indian, for example. People are, they should be proud of their heritage and should be able to express that, because we live in a, what we call as a democracy. And like I said, obviously, that's just one incident, and there's so many other incidents going on in schools. So either they decide on actually educating people with the truth, or there's silence about. But I think silence at this point is unacceptable, because remaining ignorant is not okay. But I think I'd have to leave the responsibility with the parents, because at this point we don't have any.
Actually, you made a very, very interesting point, because before we started the program, my executive producer Adil, who sat in the studio at the back, Adil, thank you for all you do, was saying that one of the schools that he was aware of, the head teacher first refused to take any. Parents wanted to do something, a fundraising event, and they refused, and then the parents sort of went back to him or her and said, no, we want to do something, and they've relented. So the parental power can have a huge influence.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So if a parent is watching this, what would you say to them? Go to the school, both of you?
I would definitely say that they need to write to the school. I think there was, for example, today there was a call for a national and a global strike. So where there's, where there's a national call or a global call outcry, I think we need to be in support of that, because right now our elected officials are not our voice and the governments are not doing enough. So it's a people's movement that's going to change the series of events. So that means parents getting in touch with the schools to say my child is not going to be attending school today, because those are children in Gaza. We've got kids, we've got nieces, and we feel it so much more, like you mentioned yourself. You feel it so much more because you've got nieces and you're able to put that real human emotion into it. So I'd just encourage everyone to get in touch with the schools, see what they're actually being taught, and also, support these causes.
You heard what Zainab said, and as I say, yesterday I heard that there was a school in Birmingham who again had refused to do anything positive. So the kids wanted to raise some money for the children of Gaza. The parents complained to the head teacher and said, we are not happy with your decision, and they've now relented. And I think next Friday is going to be a non-uniform day, and every child is been encouraged to bring £1 in or more to collect for the children of Gaza. So you have the power. Make sure you use it. Otherwise, as Tanisha and Zainab says, the schools will be very reluctant, will be very happy not to discuss this issue at all. I mean, you work with a lot of young people in your community, but places like Chickenley and places, Westmore and places like that, obviously the majority of the population is non-Asian, non-Muslim. Do you find that working in those areas, you're able to change the understanding of the people?
Yeah, but to be honest with you, I don't have to push anything. Young people ask. A lot of young people want to know. They'll ask you the questions because they're not getting answers anywhere else, and that's the reality of it. So even in those areas that are not, might not be areas of the BAME community that are quite white areas, they still want to know, because they've got friends that are. And they hear different things from their friends as opposed to what they hear from the news, because the news is being given to them through their parents, for example. And that's why I think diversity is definitely the best thing about our communities, because it educates.
If somebody from Dewsbury, one of the mosques or the community organisation, came to you and said, Tanisha, what can we do to help you, work with those young people and give them a better understanding of the reality of the world, what would you suggest?
I'd say we need to start bringing anyone together who works with young people. Bring everyone together. That's the first step. Because there's no partnership right now. I feel like there's massive duplication of work taking place, which is a waste of time and a waste of money, always has been. So the first thing I would do is I would say, who are we targeting? Who's our target audience? Youth and community, right? Let's bring everyone around a table who engages in youth and community, and let's set out a clear partnership plan that's done in a cohesive manner, and we need to strategise, and we need to pinpoint where it is that we can be successful, and we all need to be doing the same thing and relaying the same message, and applying the same plan. That's what I do. So
there is the thirst for that to be
Absolutely,
done. It's a case of somebody to organise it as well.
Because
the local government have completely lost funding at the moment. So they used to do youth work, but they don't do youth work anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Zainab, you come from Leeds, and you were saying that you have a very active community. And I know every week in Leeds you have a demonstration. You have, I think they're called Sisters in Black or something like that as well, who meet, is it on a Thursday or a Tuesday? They stand outside, I'm not sure whether it's City Hall or somewhere, with placards saying we want immediate ceasefire. But on a political level, you've got a lot of councillors in Leeds as well, for both Muslim and non-Muslim. Is there any activity taking place at the political level of the local government?
So in Leeds, I think prior to the vote for the ceasefire, there was certain engagements where, you know, like Fabian Hamilton.
Oh, an old friend of mine.
Yeah, so the community held meetings, and obviously he voted in favour of the ceasefire. Now, some of our MPs are actually reluctant to meet their communities, which is why I'm saying the movement of the people is so essential right now, because not all MPs and councillors are representative of our voices, and so we need to do our own call-out cry, really. I think realistically, a lot of people are either neutral or they, you know, they're not in favour of this, they want to abstain from the vote, or they're not in favour of the ceasefire. And it's really, it's beyond belief at this point that you can watch these atrocities and not have some human feeling in where you want to put a stop to this. So, but there is amazing community initiatives. There's the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, the Stand Up Against Racism. There's various activist organisations that have come together, and I actually attended a meeting in Leeds just last week where we have looked at different kind of ways on a grassroots level to make a difference. So they've actually got sort of a business boycott movement going on where we encourage other businesses to get involved with the boycotting, and there's just so many strands of it, like engaging with youth and students. There was actually a walkout on Thursday,
right.
And there's various initiatives like that going along. So there's a lot going along in the background, but I think it's engaging with the right people, engaging with the right organisations, and having sight of that, and hopefully we can grow that and show solidarity.
Right. I mean, in other parts of the country where you have local councillors who have not sort of voted or pushed their councils to write to the Labour Party. These are Labour councillors.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of anti-councillors feeling at the moment, and quite rightly, I would say. Do you feel that young people are now waking up to the politics of this country and the importance of the vote that they have, that the role it can play?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think there's two strands to this. There's people waking up and taking more they're taking more like there's the first strand is first of all people lacking faith in the government and the councillors and the MPs. So some people are getting put off getting involved in politics. The other strand is people are getting more educated and thinking what's the best choice for our local community? Should we vote someone independent in? Is it Conservative? Is it Labour? And I think there's that little bit more education, but at the same time people are put off engaging, and sometimes you don't necessarily get responses from councillors and MPs. So where you're even trying to engage and get a dialogue, and myself, I've wrote out to my MP and I've had no response back in regards to arranging a meeting. So I mean, where do you go from that?
When you mentioned Fabian Hamilton, I've known Fabian for nearly over 35 years, maybe even longer than that, and he's a man I have tremendous amount of respect for. He's always been on the right side of humanity and social justice. So if he gets this message, Fabian, thank you very much. As always, I love you for all the work you've done in the past. He was very much actively involved in the anti-apartheid movement as well, and everywhere when he saw injustice, I knew when he was a councillor. So yeah, Tanisha, as you were at that event in Dewsbury, both outside the Dewsbury Town Hall and also Al Hikmah Centre. But Dewsbury Town Hall, that event that evening, there was a lot of young people there. In fact, I would say the majority of them, probably 80%, were young people.
Yeah.
There's only a few old fogies like me there on a very cold day. And we both spoke. I was forced into speaking. You were forced into speaking as well. But that momentum, that passion that there was shown that night, how do we continue to keep that passion going? What do we need to do to try and make sure that when the real time comes, that passion will be translated into some real action?
Well, that protest, that lobby, was actually set up by 4 young people. It was actually 4 college students.
And I've been looking for them as well.
Oh, I know them. Yeah,
I've been looking for them.
I've got the details. So,
right, okay.
So it were 4 young
because
people.
I wanted to bring them on my TV program.
You should. They're great. They're very vocal. I think it's just a case of just echoing what we said before, which is making sure that engagement's there, making sure that the motivations our motivations are.
That's my question. How do you keep people motivated? I mean, let's hope that the atrocities end very quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? At the moment, it's on our screen, so people see it. But in order to make a real difference moving forward, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months' time, when the election takes place, How do we keep that motivation going?
It's about making sure you've got an open line of communication with the public. It's about ensuring that that education is always there, and making sure that if it's something that people care about, it can't be forgotten. So that's the first.
But this is my worry, you see, people have got fickle memories. Particularly in our community, I'm sorry to say this. I'm the biggest critic of our community. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that young people remain focused on what's happening at the moment?
I don't think it's young people that you should worry about. Young people will remember. It's not your
I
young
hope so.
people. If you're
I
talking
hope so,
about
yeah.
politics, it's not your young people that you should be worried about.
Right.
It's more people,
My
sorry,
age.
in your generation.
My age.
Because your generation have been systematically set up to vote a certain way,
Oh, yeah, we've
and
been
you weren't
indoctrin-
obscure from that.
I was a member of the Labour.
regardless.
I was a member of the Labour Party for 45 years. I helped so many people become councillors and MPs. After 45 years, in 2021, I made a speech in Bradford against Keir Starmer. But the very next week, I got a letter saying, "Thank you very much. We don't need you anymore." Since then, I have had so many phone calls from the Labour Party members saying, "Come back, please. We need you." And I've said, "Thank you very much. I don't need you." So yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's just a case of making sure that you know, those communications, open line of communication take place, whether that's through a WhatsApp group, whether that's through an email, whether that's through social media, whether that's door to door. There's so many ways that you can engage with people, you know, nowadays, and it's just making sure that that engagement's there. And again, it does need a plan. I know that people say social media is a bit of fun and it can be this, but if you actually strategize on social media and have a plan, it will do the job that you need it to do.
Thank you very much. We need to come and take some lessons from Tanisha about this, and I'm sure Zainab will be. She's already very kindly offered to teach an old man like me some new tricks. And like I say, you can't teach dogs new tricks. Zainab, what's your last few words?
My last few words would be, please continue to keep the momentum going. We cannot remain silent on this issue, and we can't let it die down. We need to keep raising our voice for Palestine, and we need to be proactive. So I'd say maybe like flash protests outside, you know, Elbit factories where they're trading arms, write to your trade unions, call for a national strike, support global strikes, and like, you know, education, we've touched on that a few times. Continue with the boycott movement. We have to think, what can we actually physically do, and just be proactive on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
I echo that, because one of the last things that Nelson Mandela said to us was that the real thing that changed South Africa and the government of South Africa was the people's boycott. And it goes back to your words, people's movement. So if we collectively make sure that we target some products and start making sure that we don't buy them in our homes, we can see a difference. Maybe not in the next month or 2 months, but eventually, inshallah, we'll see a difference. Thank you very much to my guests.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks
Thank
for
you for your
having us.
time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I hope you found it interesting as well. Inshallah, I'll be back with you next week. Take care. Assalamu alaikum. May Allah be with you, and all of you take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.